For Article 1.9, protected site is not very clear in data specification if are included also internal zoning. Because you mentioned there in data specification also, for example, biosphere reserve under UNESCO Manan Biosphere Reserve, it's specific of internal zoning. So also, according with national legislation, Romania, in our case, we have internal zoning. They are necessary also to provide reporting for this.
Okay, if you have a zone like that, you would provide it as a single polygon, as a polygon of its own, because it has its own legal act, so to say. And you would have for a national park, for example, you would have two polygons, giving the outer limits and giving the core zone of the area. If it is a legal act. If it is not a legal act, you could as well use area management. That is not protected sites, because the protected site specification refers to a legal act. That's the specific thing about, or the difference to area management, to AM. Excuse me? Okay, correct me.
No, also AM actually makes a reference to only zones that are established by legal acts. We clearly state in the data specification that protected sites actually is a kind of could have been defined as a sub-theme of AM, but since it wasn't, we clearly say that if you have protected sites that fall under the scope of the Annex 1 theme, you should use that model to provide the protected sites. And for everything else, you should use the area management. But that probably, just aside, it doesn't answer the question of the internal zoning. But as I understand, it would be provided as a separate protected site object.
If you have a legal act that is a different object, you could do it as protected site, and if it is only a management area, you can use AM.
We have a legal act for internal zoning, so it's very clear.
But please let me comment on protected sites for a moment. Protected sites was Annex 1, and we've learned quite a number of lessons since we specified Annex 1. And one of that was we didn't know exactly what the connection would be, for example, to the biodiversity themes that we specified at a later point. And now looking back to protected sites, we see that some things that are in the implementation rule should be aligned with what was found for Annex 2 and 3 themes. For example, this legal reference. We have one attribute saying this is a legal act, and the legal act should either be a text or should be a URL. Meanwhile, we understood that for quite a number of themes, we need something like a legal reference. So we created, even for the generic conceptual model, we created a more generic piece of data model saying, okay, these are the necessities that we need to meet for legal references on a broader scale. So this, now we have to look back at protected sites and say, okay, we have to get rid of that legal act which was modeled in the first place, because we have to substitute it by some other harmonized piece of data model that was created later. So this is one thing.
Okay, there's Stefan, one more question.
Yeah, just an observation from the previous presentations. There seems to be this valid interest to keep the core, the normative core, as small as possible. With the core getting smaller and smaller, the weight on things like these two IDs are getting stronger, and there will be issues around these IDs we can probably discuss later. Now I'm hearing also these code list issues mentioning. So code list, maintenance of code list, becomes also more important. But what I don't quite understand in this example, where are the code lists hooked to when it comes to the core model? In these 4 areas, for example, where do you make the link to those code lists, which then provide again an area where you need to take care of, let's say, harmonization issues, if I'm not wrong?
In the core model, it is said that you take a certain code list scheme. It has to be registered usually with EEA, for example, or even at national level, or in the INSPIRE registry. And then you say, okay, these areas belong to this scheme. And these code lists belonging to this scheme are maintained externally. In most cases, at least for the 3 themes that we have. So in the core model, you only have to identify the scheme from which you take the values, and then this points out to external code lists. And just to make you aware that with protected sites, we had an extensive integration of code lists in the implementation rule. And now we have the situation that we have externally maintained code lists with the same, or quote, list scheme, with the same values that we already had in the implementation rule in the first place. And this has to be cleared up too. I mean, there needs to be some changes in the implementation rule for at least Annex 1 theme protected sites, because, as I said, we've learned some lessons, and this has to be solved.